the Siddur, the prayer book, it's full of words about gratitude. I've always wondered, how can you just say words of gratitude as if that somehow is going to make you grateful? That doesn't seem real to me. And God, I'm grateful, thanks a lot. Is that somehow magically supposed to call up the feeling? Then I started to look closer at the way the Jewish worship service works. I feel that I was never good at praying for most of my life. And so this became a challenge for me to understand what Jewish prayer is all about. And you know what things start with, right? Modeh ani, which is the same word as Todah Rabbah. Todah, Modeh. You're saying, God, I acknowledge, I thank you for giving me back my spirit, waking up in the morning. And if you read the liner notes on the CD, my spiritual mix CD I handed out for High Holy Days, I still have about 8 more copies to give away after the service. I feel like I'm one of those guys that hawk CDs after a concert. But I have more. You'll know that Modeh ani never did much for me. Thank God I got my soul again. I mean, it would be nice if I could really feel that, but it just seems like words. But then I started to relate to the prayer that comes next, which is a prayer about the holiness of my soul, the purity of my soul. And that is the first track on the music mix, and it's now up on the website as well. The soul that you placed in me is pure, and there's no way for me to live perfectly in a finite and limited world, and so I'm going to fall short all the time. But let me never forget that there is this pure soul that is breathing in me. The word for soul and breath come from the same word. They are the same word. And you go to that place. And then you go to a place of saying, Nishmat Kochai Tivarech et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, that there's a breath, there's a soul in everything alive. And I want to listen to it because it's making music. And the ocean is full of it, and the sea is full of it, I said, and the sky, and the forest, and the grass. If only I could hear the world as God hears the world, I would hear the music that everything is making. And it's not accidental that this is all leading up to the Shema, which means to listen. And so this music's all around me, and it's the breath of everything alive is breathing and singing to you, and I want to hear the music as God hears the music. And you know my morning service on Saturday, so I'll cut to the chase, which is that then you say everything that's made of energy is making sound, and that's part of the music. And then you say there are invisible realms that we don't even touch, and that could be alternative universes, or it could be the worlds of angelic beings, or just invisible dimensions that intersect with our own and affect our lives. The angels, and we say the Kadosh, 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 Adonai, but they're singing. And they're part of this 3-tiered chorus. And then you say, I feel love. And then you say the Shema. Listen, everyone. It's one God. It's all our God. I mean, it's our God. Is that what we read earlier? When is everyone going to realize it's all the same God, but it's this God that we're all part of the choir? And so I picked up a book about gratitude by a scientist who studied it. And this is what Brene Brown had to say. It's been her life's work. Without exception, every person I interviewed who described living a joyful life, or who described themselves as joyful, actively practiced gratitude and attributed their joyfulness to their gratitude practice. Both joy and gratitude were described as spiritual practices that were bound to a belief in human interconnectedness and a power greater than us. And people were quick to point out the differences between happiness and joy as the difference between a human emotion that is connected to circumstances and a spiritual way of engaging with the world that's connected to practicing gratitude. I started to realize what the Saturday morning service is all about. It is a gratitude practice. It's not supposed to be that you say, Modeh ani, thank you very much, God, and you're already there. It's about taking time. Turn off your cell phone. If someone interrupts you, you're polite to them. Jewish law has a lot to do with politeness. But if you're thankful, but your cell phone doesn't count. But if a human being interrupts you, you acknowledge them. But otherwise, you listen. And you sit there in silence. My favorite Spanish poet, who still is barely translated, has no major works ever translated into English, Luis Rosales wrote, God, it was silence that was the first of your gifts. It was silence. There were lands with no grass and a trembling night, and then only your eyes between being and nothingness. And what sign of love moved your tongue? Remember, God says, let there be. What sign of love moved your tongue? It was the sound of silence. All the earth in ecstasy, like an astonished ocean, and life was song. Because on the face of the water, silence was the unity of all things. The unity of the energies in the Big Bang, the unity of the invisible universes, the unity of all of life in song. Understand this. Life, silence, is a motionless prayer. It's like the beating of a harp. Listen to the hills and the seas and the islands. It's exactly what we did on Friday night. It is silence that is love. I place it at your feet, and with it the north, which is the intention to persevere in the moment. And so I don't weep for what I've lost, Lord, because I know now that nothing is ever lost. I realize it's a gratitude practice. The listening, the silence, the taking the break. It's not a doing. But it is a doing. So I caught myself up in it. I tripped myself up. How do you talk about these things? How is a listening a doing? Is silence a doing? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. The first step is to know, as Dr. Brown points out, distinguish between the joy that comes from gratitude and the happiness that comes from a thing or from a circumstance. I used to think being joyful, being grateful is like, I'm so grateful that my kids are healthy today. And I'm so grateful that Marat's not sick. And well, I guess the same thing. I'm so grateful that she didn't complain about going to school. And I'm so grateful my wife didn't come down on me for the fact that I haven't done the dishes in 3 weeks. And I'm so grateful that she forgave me for celebrating her birthday a day late. And all those kinds of things, right? So I'm really saying I'm so grateful, but it's really all kind of anxiety and fear. It's trying to be grateful for the moment, for the circumstance, and it almost always reflects something like it doesn't really feel like what the Shema is talking about. It doesn't really feel like being connected. She says, our actual experience of joy, these intense feelings of deep spiritual connection and pleasure, they seize us in a very vulnerable way. What emerged from my data is something similar to what I learned from a professor of Greek. Pointed out that in Greek philosophy there are 2 words for happiness. Makarios, which means the freedom from worry, and kairo, which means a good mood of the soul that comes with virtue and wisdom. For me, I think lights, she writes, are the perfect metaphor for joy. Joy is not a constant. It comes to us in moments, and often ordinary moments. And sometimes we miss out on the burst of joy because we're too busy chasing down extraordinary moments. Other times we're so afraid of the dark that we don't dare let ourselves enjoy the light. A joyful light is not a floodlight of joy, and that would eventually become unbearable. I believe a joyful life is made up of joyful moments gracefully strung together by trust, gratitude, inspiration, and faith. She says many people she interviewed were incapable of this joy because she said that they reported, I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. And acknowledging how grateful I am is an invitation for disaster. I'd rather not be joyful than have to wait for the other shoe to drop. That sounds just like my Jewish grandparents. That's exactly what they taught me. God forbid you should, don't invite the evil eye. How dare you say such a thing? Nothing's good is happening. It just means you're going to worry more when the other shoe drops. I think we should go, I think a better guide is the Saturday morning service. think about I think about this. Saturday morning, there's a psalm that pops in between the talk of the soul and the talk of all breath being part of this song and everything alive singing to God. And it is the Shabbat psalm, actually, the Shabbat morning. And the Shabbat psalm says, you gotta feel trust at night, and you gotta have faithfulness in the morning, and you gotta verbalize it. It's very interesting. It says you have to speak of it, magi. You gotta tell the room for storytelling, be a magi. You gotta be a storyteller of it in the morning and at night. So it was interesting that I thought when Lynn Twist in her book, The Soul of Money, writes, for me and for many of us, our first waking thought of the day is I didn't get enough sleep. The next one is I don't have enough time. Now that Rob is in school, I always think both of these. Whether true or not, that thought of not enough occurs to us automatically before we even think to question or examine it. We spend most of the hours and the days of our lives hearing, explaining, complaining, or worrying about what we don't have enough of. We don't have enough exercise. We don't have enough work. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough power. We don't have enough nature. We don't have enough weekends. And of course, we always come back to money because none of us have enough money ever. Then we say, if only I were thinner, I'm not thin enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not educated enough, I'm not successful enough, and before we even sit up in bed, before our feet touch the floor, we're already inadequate. We're already lacking something. What begins as a simple expression of the hurried life, or even the challenged life, grows into the great justification for an unfulfilled life. I go back to the notion of silence and what is prayer. Prayer is telling us, find your way to gratitude. Let me speak words. It's like let something come out of my mouth that goes with the music around me. And is it saying a bunch of words in the prayer book that gets you there? Or is it the sitting there? And so much of that first part of the service is in silence. Is it something about the silence? I don't know if any of you practice mindfulness meditation. I have avoided it because I don't want something else on my to-do list. I don't have enough time to do all the things that are already on my to-do list. When someone says, practice some meditation, that sounds like something I probably can't fit in. And if I could, I wouldn't be any good at it anyway. But I had a profound experience about a week ago. I'd shown up for Marav's, for the teacher-student conference for TK. Everything is a Shechianu for me this year. Everything is new. We say Shechianu practically every day. It's my first parents-teacher conference, and she said, first, I have to ask Marav some questions and test her. Depending on how much she can do and how much she knows, it'll be longer if she knows more, but it's usually 10 minutes. Half an hour later, I was called into the room. That was a brag, in case you didn't know. I was called into the room. But during the half an hour I was sitting outside, it was about 102 degrees. And I don't get any cell reception at Chaparral. I was sitting in the heat, and I had nothing else to do. So I decided, my time has come. I'm going to practice mindfulness meditation. After about 10 minutes trying to get myself on to work. And I know that when mindfulness meditation is simply this. It has one command, the Buddha gave it to, the Kabbalists gave the same command. Do nothing. Can you do nothing? And since you can't do nothing, because our minds are these creatures like oceans or waves that are lapping at the shore constantly, they're always reaching out, then sit there in silence and think about breathing. Just start with your breath. And realize that you're breathing, and when you realize your mind's wandering to something else, like that's interesting that white car went by. And I thought about buying that car once, but I decided, read Consumer Reports, just stop. Go back to the breathing. And what happened is that which of course is the surface, right? Start with Modeh Ani. You have silence, silence, silence. You say, I should be speaking when I get up in the morning, when I go to bed, with crucial moments to be telling a story of gratitude. Then you go back to silence, and then you say, everything that's got breath, it's making music. So start with the breath. And the word for soul, neshama, comes from the word throat and breath. The word nefesh for soul comes from the word breath. And the other word for soul in Judaism also comes from the word breath. And so I did it. And what I heard around me at one point, first of all, I not only just started hearing everything around me as music, whether the car in the distance or my own breathing, I felt this feeling of peacefulness that I just haven't been feeling in my life. I felt deeply grateful. And it wasn't grateful for the opportunity to meet Mrs. Voorhees, and wasn't grateful for the opportunity to be here on this day. It wasn't tied to circumstance. It was just a gratitude that we get to be here. It was simple. Sherry Turkle wrote a book called Alone Together. Why we expect more from technology and less from each other. It's a fantastic book. She's devoted the last 10 years of her life to studying technology. And I wrote down 6 conclusions, or maybe more, but they're short. A couple of conclusions that she drew. So you don't have to read the book now. The cliff notes are here. Online we find company, but we are also more exhausted than ever by keeping up with our online commitments. One of the other ones on here is the fact that cell phones have now made it possible that people expect an immediate response. I know Lynn's mother does. Like when Lynn's mom is like, hey, how you doing? Did you get that package I sent you? If we don't get a response back to her within a half an hour, what's wrong with you? Do you just not want me to send any more packages? Is it too much bother to be in touch with your mother? I don't think she's alone. I mean, I think, I've had people say, Rabbi, I know you're very busy, you didn't get back to me. You just emailed me yesterday. Or you emailed me yesterday, which was my day off, and now I'm getting to my email, so you're 98 in line. I mean, I'm getting there. Whatever happened to it, but that one time you emailed me back right away. And I'm like, well, I guess I better stop doing that, because it raises expectations. And you've all been there in those shoes about trying to figure out if you respond right away, did they come to expect it? So that's another one. Online and the phone, this is her biggest one. We rarely have each other's full attention. I don't know about you, but when I'm on the phone to some of my best friends, I don't have too many left. Have you ever noticed that I finish what I'm saying, and I'm waiting for what they're going to say, and there's a strange pause. And I don't think it's because they're so deep in thought and awe at my statement. And sometimes I hear, oops, I hear the invisible, oops, it's my turn. So I've been talking, it's really hard, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't know how to help this person, and it really got me down. And am I really a good person? And then you hear, it's hard to be there for people. You should see what I'm going through. And so one is that we've learned that people multitask. And that people report that they rarely feel that they have the other person's full attention. Number 3, her study shows, and this is widespread knowledge at this point, that we're addicted to the cell phones or the internet. And it sounds like a big word, and we all say, oh, the rabbi went too far, and why do we have to use that word addiction? It's because, basically, in simplest terms, maybe too simple, but my brother does this for a living, I always refer to him. The brain is wired that new things give you a shot of dopamine, sometimes serotonin. Something new that you weren't expecting, it gives you a boost, right? And that's my phone. Right? I could be playing Go Fish with my daughter, but there's nothing new that's going to come out of Go Fish with my daughter. But does my phone vibrate? It could be anything, right? It could be my fantasy team won. It could be it could be you. And I wasn't expecting you, and you just came into my living room, and I love you. That was so cool. There's actually an effect in my brain. So it forms an addiction. It's an addiction to the new, and it's wired in the brain, and it can easily be measured. And so we get addicted to the new. And she reports that we will drop a commitment if something new is offered to us. We'll drop the commitment when we already are in because something is new. How often have you told me, I'll see you at family service, and when I don't see you, it's like, oh, well, a friend invited me to dinner. You like friendship, don't you, Rabbi? I'm like, I think I just got caught in a catch-22 here, you logical demon, you. Of course I respect friendship, and we will drop a commitment if something new is offered. Number 4, because of the nature of our cell phones and how they're smartphones, our work and our home lives are now mixed. It is harder than ever to find a balance between the two because there's no division on my phone between my work life and my home life. Number 5. No, we did number 5. Number 6. Surveys show that Americans report themselves as more lonely than ever before. They report that despite having more contacts and friends and coworkers and Facebook friends, that when they are in a crisis, they report that the only people they can call are family. They don't feel that the people that they would call that they're normally in contact with would really be able to fulfill that commitment because they know we're all multitasking. Which shows that are the ties that are occupying us, ties that are binding us. The word for religion is Latin. It means something that binds you together. Are the ties that are occupying us really the ties that are binding us? I watched this weird documentary that blew me away on internet addiction among teenagers, and it was about how the Chinese are dealing with it. The amazing thing that blew me away is the Chinese are actually very, very sensitive about it, and they're doing a fantastic job. And they found that the root cause of gaming addiction among teenagers is, number 1, loneliness. Remember that partly with China's one-child policy, and most people chose boys, you have an awful lot of boys who are being driven by their parents who are both working jobs and are forcing them to study a lot and to go get ahead, and they're lonely. They don't have other people around them. And their main problem in cracking internet addiction is that the teenagers have too much pride to admit their addiction. Fascinating thing was when this documentary about China, when the credits rolled, it was all made in Israel. It was made by Israelis who went to China and made the documentary, and they made it a version in English, which is available. I think my wife was streaming it on Amazon. Practicing turning off the cell phone, and you're like, oh my gosh, really? The rabbi gave a sermon about turning off the cell phone? Yes and no. Of course it's a sermon about turning off the cell phone because that's something I struggle with, and I'm terrible at it. But if we can understand how the tradition is inviting us into a space, a mindfulness practice of filling time with a different kind of joy, not the joy tied to circumstance, not the joy tied to the new, but the joy of being able to sit in silence and listen to our heartbeat and hear the music around us and feel fortunate that we even get to be here, then we've accomplished something. Something for fun. In the Atlantic this year, which I still read, it's one of the few things I still read, they had a very short story by a guy named Tim Walker who took a teaching job in Finland. And he said, wrote 5 bad American habits I kicked in Finland. I'll share some of them with you. By the way, I'm one of those Bernie Sanders type people. I'm kind of like, why does America always have to be better than every other place? The people in Sweden and Finland and some of those places, they seem like they're pretty happy. Like, am I not allowed to believe that? So here we go. Number 1. After spending 2 years in Finland, number 1, I don't fear awkward silences. I've yet to meet an American who doesn't dread the awkward silence. A lull in any conversation is to be avoided at all costs, even if it means talking about the latest viral cat video or the Kardashians. The Finns I've met, on the other hand, embrace the awkward silence. They understand that it's a part of the natural rhythm of human interaction. Yes, they know how to have conversations, but they're not driven by a compulsion to fill time and space with needless chatter. On the morning commute to my toddler's daycare, the subway is often so packed that we can't find a spot to sit, and yet it's remarkably quiet. On the rare occasions when someone does speak, whether to bid farewell to a friend or make a quick phone call, my son asks me, "Why are they talking, Dada?" He is just 2 years old, but he already understands the culture of comfortable silence. Number 2, I don't say things I don't mean. Before we moved to Finland, I'd say things I didn't mean all the time. I would tell people, I can't wait to get together with you. I'd meet people at a party and say we should get together sometime. In Finland, when I did this and then they called, it was awkward. I would explain, I never said I wanted to meet up with you. I just said I'd love to meet up sometime again. It's like an expression. They told me, Tim, you can't speak like that here. People will take you at your word. Number 3, I don't leave food on my plate. One of the things that he found was in the cafeteria at his school where he was a teacher, they definitely made you put the food waste in one container for composting. So barbaric. And then they have the container for the things that are getting washed, right? So what they do for a whole cafeteria is they have all of these big containers for the trays and the cutlery, and for the whole school, they give you one bucket for the food waste. So the expectation is you don't throw out your food. He says more about that. I'll let that go. Number 4, I don't take coffee to go. Finns get their coffee, they sit down, and then they stare into space. Just in case you think they don't know how to drink coffee, they drink twice as much coffee per capita as Americans. They sit in silence. And number 5, because I know you're curious, is that he doesn't mind being naked. Because people invite you to meet them in the sauna, and if you're wearing your bathing suit, they kind of look at you. But I like that one. But don't invite me to the sauna. Abraham Joshua Heschel once wrote, you probably know it, what is Shabbat? Shabbat is spiritual technology that is to teach you how to live in time. The 7th day is a palace in time which we build. It is made of soul and of joy and of reticence. In its atmosphere of discipline is a reminder of adjacency to eternity. Indeed, the splendor of the day is expressed in terms of abstentions, just as the mystery of God is more adequately conveyed by saying what God is not. You already just did there. It's a beautiful thing. Just as we can be most fully there by stopping the things that we're doing. We most fully describe God when we stop trying to describe God. We often feel how poor the edifice would be that we build if we build it exclusively of our rituals and deeds, which are so awkward and sometimes obtrusive. That's the people who say, I don't like Jewish ritual, it doesn't speak to me. How else but express glory in the presence of eternity, if not by the silence of abstaining from noisy acts? These restrictions utter songs to those who know how to stay at a palace with a queen. So to wrap it up, Judaism is a technology for cultivating gratitude. A gratitude that's not tied to circumstance, but is grounded in just being. Experiencing the silent, having the rabbi recommend mindful meditation, turn off the cell phone and stare into space. And listen to your soul and listen to your breath and feel God's presence. Don't be uncomfortable with silence, because it is the stopping of the noise around us that is making a place for being instead of having. And as a friend, practice giving another person your undivided attention. Don't be like the people on the playground. Just last night, said to Lynn, she took the kids out so I could think about my words tonight. I planned a whole different sermon than the one I gave, because I always do that. She said, well, it was okay, except that there were some kids there that kept asking me to play with them and push them on the swings. And she's like, I told them. I said, you need to go ask your own mommies to do that, and your own daddies. And they said, but they're all the way over there on their cell phone. Studies show when you eat in silence, you taste it more and you eat less. Adonai, silence was the first of your gifts. With it, you gave us the norm of how to be. Life was a song because on the face of the waters, silence was the unity of all things. Silence is a motionless prayer. It's like the beating of a heart. It's like the sound in the hills, the seas. It's a silence that is love. I place it at your feet and with it the norm. The intention to be in the pure instant. I don't weep for what is lost, Lord. Nothing is ever lost. Shana Tova. I ask Sharna to come up.